What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Streckbine, joined every Friday by my main man, Derek Bell. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast today. Fully loaded show for you guys. Kenny Pickett, a dark horse MVP candidate. Big Ben, AB, and Marquise Pouncey named to the future Hall of Famers list, but there's some questions about when they will get in, and we're going to touch on the tight ends and some interesting thoughts that have come about in the last week and what we feel the Steelers tight end room is going to look like come week one of the regular season. It's a beautiful day in the Berg. I just walked down the street to Target, came back. I think I lost 30 pounds because it is so humid outside, but cannot complain. How you feel, my friend?
Yeah, man, it's gonna be 94 degrees here in the Ville today, I think. So I ran outside yesterday. My plan is to run outside today, but man, I don't know if that's gonna happen. I might be going soft and go into the gym instead to get on the treadmill.
You're yeah, DB is the man. Here's the thing, dude. When it comes to you and running, you ran in the smoke that we weren't supposed to run in. You run in 94-degree humidity. You're already 30 pounds maximum total weight on your body. Like, well, I think a rest day is, a little soft day, I think is okay. I think that's totally fine.
I'm trying to run that. If anybody's listening wants to run that Steelers walk and run with me, and I think it's like late August, early September. I'm planning on doing that.
Where are we running that? What is that?
I don't know. It's like something with the Steelers.com. They do it. They've done it like 3 or 4 years in a row. It's like a walk and run or whatever. It's just like a 5K.
Oh, bro, I could do a 5K. I got you on the 5K. You're going to smoke me, but
I'm going to do it virtually because I'm not actually going to be in
well, then what am I doing? I'm not doing it virtually.
Well, you don't have to. I'm saying I do. I'm
not doing it at all. I'm not if you're not there to push me to do this, there's zero chance I'm running 3.2 miles. No, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'll go hit the bag and get a 1 mile jog in, and I'll feel totally fine. Totally fine. But anybody out there who does want to join Derek, you do your stuff. You toss your name in the comments. We'll get in touch with you. We'll get in touch with you. All right, let's talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football. We'll start with Kenny Pickett, Rondé Barber, the 33rd team, who I guess the 33rd team is the only person who puts out content, or the only publication that puts out content this time of year, named 6 dark horse candidates for the upcoming season. Kenny Pickett was one of them, named by potential future Hall of Famer Rondé Barber, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Fun fact about Rondé Barber here. I used to live down the street from 2 kids, Nick and Gabe, or Gabrielle. And their last name was Barber. Until I was about 18 years old, I was convinced that they had me convinced that he was their uncle. And these, nobody from Jessup's related to anybody in the NFL ever. But have me going just because of the last name. Anyways, he was named a dark horse by Rondé Barber. Quote, this is a quote from Barber: "Dark horse candidates are always bad bets because they're always on average-ass teams and they need everything to go right for their team to win. Kenny Pickett showed that he has some serious game down the stretch in 2022 and that he is suited for the NFL. He's got 2 really good young receivers and a stud tight end. If the Pittsburgh Steelers defense rebounds, he'll get them into the playoffs." I mean, the playoffs are cool. I think that's awesome. The real question is, is there really any chance that this guy competes with names like Patrick Mahomes, who's the favorite, Joe Burrow? Kenny Pickett's current odds, if you guys are taking long shots, are plus 4,500 to win the MVP this season. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is plus 700. So the payout is there if you're thinking that Rondé Barber is on to something here.
Yeah, that's quite the leap, man. Going from 7 touchdowns to MVP would be pretty historic of an improvement. But I definitely think that we're going to see a good jump, hopefully, from Pickett. There's definitely some things that I think you saw down the stretch in terms of him starting to put some stuff together, which is really exciting. And then to Rondé's point, I do think that the environment, the infrastructure that is there for Pickett to take a good leap forward. I don't see MVP caliber ceiling with Pickett as a player in general, especially in year 2 of all years. But I definitely do think that, the Steelers have provided him with enough weapons for him to be a quarterback that you can win with and make the playoffs with. So, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, he mentioned Pat Fryer moved to, I think, the same 33rd team or whatever, named him as a top tight end a couple of days ago. So he's definitely got the talent around him too. But with MVP candidates, we're talking about the reasons why their teams win. I don't really necessarily think that that's the kind of leap that we're kind of expecting from Pickett in year 2. I just, the volume, I don't think is going to be there either. I think the Steelers want to run the ball, and that changes if Pickett ends up being like this a leader for top 10 quarterback type of player. That will change because they'll want to throw the ball more. But I think the game plan on offense is going to be pretty run heavy in my opinion.
Yeah. If we're going to put a real bet on who's winning MVP this year, Najee Harris would be, would probably be a better guess. It's zero chance for either one of them. But if Najee Harris wins MVP, I mean, I would be hyped. I would be very excited about Kenny Pickett. You know what I mean? Future franchise quarterback. That's awesome. If Najee Harris wins MVP this season, the Steelers are going places.
I also don't think, in order to win MVP, I would be interested to look at the numbers of the team success of MVP selections. But I don't think
who won MVP last year? Mahomes?
I don't think the Steelers are going to have a good enough offense to win MVP. Like, you have to have an elite offense to win MVP pretty much. So the Steelers, we're just looking for above average. Like we get an above average offense in Pittsburgh.
Capable would be the word.
I'm totally down for that. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'd say it's a slim chance, but it's cool that his name's out there, if anything. I think the fact that people are recognizing this guy as somebody who has some NFL game is exciting for Steelers fans. It's exciting for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, he's got a ton of love this offseason, I feel like.
Yeah, a ton of love this offseason. But, if we're being honest, Ben never won MVP because he battled through the likes of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers and Kenny Pickett. If he has the same, even if he has the same Hall of Fame career, which we're going to touch on that here in a second, if he has the same Hall of Fame career, he's battling through the likes of Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, all these names for his entire career. Chances are he doesn't win any MVPs, could still be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's not, and I'm not saying that he's going to be. I'm saying that, you don't need to win MVP to have the craziest career that you could possibly have, because Ben is a prime example of that one, which, I think is cool. And just like you said, the love that he's getting this offseason has been nice. I do want to answer Michael's question here. Who will have a bigger impact on defense, Keanu Benton or Joey Porter Jr.? Let's start with that one. Benton or JPJ? Who are you thinking?
Oh man, that's a tough one.
Right? That's a good one.
I was thinking a lot
that they might be starters.
Yeah, I think I agree there. Man, I was thinking about Benton yesterday, just when I was trying to wind down to take my nap. But
that's good.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how Benton gets deployed. I thought that over his last year at Wisconsin, he really started showing some more pass rush ability. And I think that the Steelers are going to give him some opportunities in sub-package football to get on there as a 3-tech, which is where I think his more natural fit is on defense instead of like a pure nose tackle, just because I'm curious on how that's going to look. I really want to see how he does at the next level playing nose tackle, because I really do. I wish there was a way to get him on the field at defensive end. I just feel like it's a more natural fit. But, man, Joey Porter Jr., I think he's going to be on the field day one and nickel. Yes. And that's tough. I don't know who you going with. I may steal your answer.
So this is a tough one. It is very, very tough. I think Keanu Benton makes a bigger impact immediately. I think Joey Porter could develop by the end of the season, have a bigger impact on the defense. But I think week one, Benton's going to be there's going to be noticeable run stuffs where you're like, "Ooh, that was Benton. That was a good one." We're Joey Porter Jr.'s got to go up against Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, just crazy Odell Beckham Jr. These big names immediately. In week one, he's got to face Deebo Samuels. It's going to be a lot tougher for him to make an impact than for Benton to make an impact, I feel, immediately. I think that as he develops, that changes.
Yeah, I feel like we'd have a better. I feel like we'd have such a better answer after we see these guys in preseason. I
Yeah,
would,
obviously.
but they're both really going to be key. I mean, that's the thing with Benton. You know, he's going to have to come in and play the run really well in order for him to continue to get on the field on early downs. But one thing I like about Benton, man, he's so heavy handed. Like
Yes.
he's really good at getting off blocks. He's not the double team kind of nose tackle that I feel like, maybe most people kind of are after. I feel like we're trending back towards some of those run stoppers in the middle that kind of attract those double teams. That's really not Benton's game, but he does a really good job of stacking and shedding blocks. So I like him a lot. And then Joey Porter Jr., like you said, they are going to absolutely throw him into the fire. I mean, he's going to
Yes.
see a lot of really good players, really from the jump. So you even think about week one. I mean, he's going to be out there week one, and the Niners, they got one of the best wide receiver tandems in the league with, Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, who I think Brandon Ayuk's one of the most underrated players, not just receivers, but underrated players in the league. So I'm excited to see how he does and he stacks up once we get out there.
All right, on offense, Darnell Washington or Calvin Austin III?
Washington. I'm not gonna
What?
go. Yeah, I think
Yeah, okay.
Washington. Yeah, it
That
won't.
one's
It
stunned
may
me.
not be in the stat sheet. Like
Mhm.
the box score watchers are not gonna notice it, but I definitely think it's Washington.
Oh, that one stunned me. I'm going Calvin Austin. I think it's Calvin Austin. I think Calvin Austin's going to be a menace this year. I think he's going to make big play after big play. He's going to be utilized in a whole different ton of ways. The offense could be terrible. Matt Canada could ruin everything. But if they don't, and we're going to speak optimistically for the time being, I'm going to go Calvin Austin. But I do think Darnell Washington's going to be stud. I think that his impact in the running game is going to be nuts. So I think it's going to be
That's
there.
where I think it matters right there. I think that the things that you can do. I just think the additions of Washington and Jones up front in the trenches are going to be able to allow the Steelers to be more versatile if they want to, but
Yeah.
I also think it allows them to kind of impose their will on defenses. And that's something that, I talked about. It just seems like the Steelers are heading in that direction where they really want to be a run first team
Mhm.
and really establish some sort of identity on offense, which they were kind of lacking until the second half of the season last year.
Yeah.
So I really feel like that's kind of the direction that they're going, and I just think Washington already, just the things that he can do from a physical standpoint. It's having a good blocking tight end. When I watch teams around the league, I don't think that Steeler fans probably understand because we haven't really seen a good blocking tight end in a little bit.
Yeah.
But having a really good blocking tight end can open up so many different things
Oh,
in
yeah.
the run game. And I think that Washington, if the technique improves, just off raw ability, like he's going to be an impact player in that regard, even though it's not going to show up in the stat sheet.
I like that. I'm excited for both of them. I think that they are huge parts of the Steelers offense going forward. I do want to touch on the Darnell Washington reports, but what I want to say is this. We're going to get to this at the end after we just talk about some Hall of Fame stuff that's about to happen, and then we will touch on all of the tight end action, including the reports about Darnell Washington. There is a list presented by the 33rd team, which again seems to be the roadmap of the offseason. Nobody else puts any content out except for the 33rd team, and a lot of it's controversial, but this one is seemingly pretty good. They put out a list of future Hall of Famers, that have recently retired. Ben Roethlisberger, Marquise Pouncey, and Antonio Brown land in there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Different categories. Big Ben lands in the lock category. Marquise Pouncey and Antonio Brown are likely Hall of Famers with names like Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers, Jason Witten in there as well. Let's start with Big Ben. After that came out, there was a tweet from JPA Football or something, one of those random football accounts, but there's 147,000 people that follow that account that said true or false. Ben Roethlisberger is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think we can both agree he's a lock. All of the comments on that tweet seemingly said, yes, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Let's dive into that real quick. Ben, first ballot, 0 questions asked. I think in my head, it's an easy yes, but I want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be. I don't really think that there really should be a ton of debate on that. Ben finished fifth in yards, 8 in passing touchdowns. So the numbers are definitely there. But you look at, the game-winning drives, the fourth-quarter comebacks. He's third all-time in game-winning drives, third all-time in fourth-quarter comebacks. So 2 Super Bowl rings. Maybe what I consider as the greatest throw in NFL history to win the second Super Bowl. So I think you've got all the boxes checked on there for Ben. I don't think that there will be a very long discussion, or there shouldn't be, in terms of is this guy worthy of making the Hall of Fame? You can't really tell like the story of the NFL, at least during his playing career, without Ben. So I definitely think he deserves to be first ballot. I anticipate, him being in there really, really quickly. So
yes, I think he's a first ballot. I don't think there's any questions asked. The big things come down to very, very simple things. Very simple things. Never had a losing record, 2-time Super Bowl champion, played in 3 of them, has a winning record in the playoffs. Like, just like you said, what is he, first in fourth quarter comebacks?
He's third in fourth quarter comebacks and third in game-winning drives.
Yeah, and what the game-winning drives number is ridiculous. It's 53 game-winning drives in an 18-year career. There's just no question. Like, the Hall of Fame is not about, he had the greatest stats of all time, even though, that's definitely goes into it. Was this guy one of the greatest football players to ever play? And Ben Roethlisberger for 18 years was one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. Zero questions asked. He's the greatest quarterback in probably the most successful franchise in Super Bowl history. And that speaks crazy, crazy volumes. On top of that, like the names that go around him, which I think play a huge part into this, like Frank Gore is probably a Hall of Famer, I would say, like very early in his, potential to get in, or his availability to get in. Jason McCourty's probably up there as well. But like, there's not really a ton of names that retired with Ben that you're sitting around going, yeah, that guy's getting in before Ben Roethlisberger. Larry Fitzgerald, did he ever officially retire? I don't think he ever did.
I think he is retired now, but he'll be in a different class, right? Because he didn't play, because he'll be a first ballot in the year before, right? Because he didn't play the year before. Yeah,
he didn't play the year before.
Okay,
yeah,
so, he'll definitely, Larry will definitely be first.
Yeah, Larry's in there. That's not a question. It was just 100%. Like who else is getting in.
No, I think Ben should be the, like Nick said, I think Ben should be the headliner for his class, which is really exciting, especially for Steeler fans. That's gonna be an awesome weekend in Canton. And just to hit on too, I think like when I know quarterback wins is always a really touchy topic on Twitter, because some people think it matters, some people think it doesn't matter at all. I think I fall somewhere in between. I think it's pretty obvious to understand that, especially in the modern NFL. The NFL is a quarterback league. That's just how it is, man. Like, if you have an elite quarterback, you're going to have a chance to win every single Sunday. And you just look at the numbers for Ben, 178 and 91 overall. This is a 661 win percentage. You got to think about it, man. For 18 years, the Steelers won 2 out of every 3 games when he was in the lineup. I mean, that's just absurd to think about. Like, you even look at like how that stacks up against the 4 quarterbacks that are ahead of him technically in wins. Tom Brady, of course, 75%. Peyton Manning, 68%. So like Ben's right there, like neck and neck with him. Brett Favre at 61%. Drew Brees at 59%. So that's what elite quarterbacks do. You have a chance no matter what the scenario, the circumstance, the lineups, the opponent, the venue. You have a chance every single week. And I think that if you really follow the Steelers over the course of Ben's career, you kind of felt like that. If he was in the lineup, I always felt confident that the Steelers were going to come away with a win, regardless of who was on the other side. So
even on the last year, when things were as rough as they got, you were just like, Ben will pull it off, and he did a lot of times.
Yeah, and it was only like he could only muster up like a little bit of that like flash in the pan greatness, but it was all like he still had that clutch gene and was able to do it at the end of the game. So
Yeah.
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 I don't that one 100%. To me, I refuse to believe. I think the one thing that people are going to say is, oh, he didn't win an MVP or he wasn't, first team all pro. But I would just push back on that and say, not every quarterback gets to play in the same era. I think if you look at
Yes.
it, Ben played in the golden age of quarterbacks.
He did play in the goal
He
with the
played
greatest quarterback of all time.
he literally played not just in the same era as Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, probably two of the four greatest quarterbacks of all time, at least. But he played in the same conference, and he was
Yep.
still able to win 2 Super Bowls. He was still able to finish, top 10 in pretty much every statistical category.
Yep.
To me, it's a no-brainer.
No, zero thoughts there. I agree with you. This is the big one, though. Is Antonio Brown first ballot Hall of Famer? So this is what the 33rd team had to say on that one. If he is judged simply on statistics and impact on the game, Brown will speed his way to Canton. But like Terrell Owens previously, his disruptiveness, some have called him a quote-unquote coach killer, which I don't agree with, could delay or prevent his entry into the Hall. It's a huge question because you do look on his on-field production. I mean, DK Metcalf said it the other day. Antonio Brown is in his eyes the greatest to ever play. I think that if he finished his career the way that it was going, there's a real conversation there at some point. Like, is AB the greatest of all time? The fall off was as extreme as it gets, and one that you will find very, very difficult to forget anytime soon. And it's just a matter of, there's some people out there that say the Hall of Fame is what you do in the NFL. And there are some people that say the Hall of Fame is how you represent the NFL. And I think AB has a pretty good argument for one and a pretty bad argument for the other. So you think he's a first ballot? You think he gets in if you don't think he's a first ballot?
I would be very surprised if he's first ballot. And that's not anything necessarily to do with his on-field production. I think that there was enough of a peak right there during that 5-6 year stretch with him and Ben to definitely warrant first ballot consideration. I mean, Antonio on the field, definitely one of the best receivers that I've ever seen play. I mean, he was absolutely phenomenal. But there's also the Hall of Fame's weird about receivers in general. We saw what they did to Terrell Owens, a very similar type of elite player that ended up having to wait because of what we assume is some rocky relationships with the media or just public perception in general. But there's other guys like waiting to get into the Hall of Fame as well. So there's a little bit of a backlog. Torrey Holt's still waiting to get in, I believe. Torrey Holt was a 7-time Pro Bowler, Hall of Fame All-2000s team. He's like top 15 in all-time receiving yards. So he's a guy that, is still kind of waiting to get in. Some of the other guys, won a Super Bowl, but his teammate, Isaac Bruce had to wait a little bit to get in. So there's, Reggie Wayne, Andre Johnson. I think that, Antonio definitely has a case to get in over some of those guys, even Steve Smith. Are they going to vote him in over Torrey Holt or over,
that's the question.
Steve Smith or somebody like that? I don't really know the answer to that. I think that they will probably make him wait a year at least and then kind of see what's going on with him after that. So
I think they're, depending on when it like officially, which I guess would be what, 2021 is when he walked off the field. So that would be the end of it right there, would be 2021. So 2026 would be I think a lot of that depends on, do I think he's a first ballot? I think if you take on the field production, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Do I think he'll get in as a first ballot Hall of Famer? No. But I think that when he gets in will depend a lot and very heavily on when the antics stop, because there's literally zero chance that the Pro Football Hall of Fame is going to take a risk and allow Antonio Brown onto a stage right now. That's just, that's just not going to happen. There are things to this where the off the field issues will play a role in, just like the Terrell Owens thing. And you could say like, oh, that should be included, that should not be included. The human aspect of this is a group of people who vote on this, who care, who this is their entire life. Their entire life is the Pro Football Hall of Fame, representing the Pro Football Hall of Fame and building it into something magnificent. And putting Antonio Brown on a stage right now is a flight risk. And they just won't do it. They won't even take that chance.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, he answers some of those questions about being able to, get things straightened away off the field in the next couple of years. And then we can kind of say, like, look, this is the person he is now and everything's taken care of. And, he can be honored in a way that his, at least on field play reflected.
Yes,
But I
agreed.
do think he's going to wait. I don't think that they're going to be willing to vote him in first team All Pro, especially or first team Hall of Fame, just because if they didn't do it for To, I don't think they're going to do it for AB.
Yeah,
And
no
then if
chance, dude. They did
yeah,
it for To's was nothing compared to AB. To was
yeah,
nothing in the first place. There was some, okay, yeah, whatever. It was not AB.
doing
Nobody
sit
has
ups
ever
in the
been AB.
driveway.
Yeah, like
I will never forget where I was when I came home, and I think I was watching, it was ESPN back when ESPN was ESPN,
yeah.
and they're sitting there doing around the clock coverage of To, just doing those sit ups in the driveway. That was so funny.
I love that. That was the greatest. Like if I could grow up, if I could be, because you got me beat. You're like 2 years older than me now?
I turned 30 in a couple of days, man.
Yeah. So 2 years, just about 2.5 years. And so you got me like, you were like that age where you're like, oh, you know what's going on. I was just like, oh, look at this guy doing sit-ups in the driveway. Would have loved to be just old enough to know what was going on. Beautiful. Yeah, but no. And then, the big one before we move on real quick, Marquise Pouncey, possibly up there. I think center's got a bad rep. Offensive lineman as a whole get a bad rep. But I think, at the same time, he is one of the greatest centers of all time, one of the greatest centers in a great organization. And I think if you're going to put Ben in there to have Marquise, kind of aligns. Thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, 9-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All Pro.
Yep.
It does help Pouncey that he was on the 2010s team as well. So I think Pouncey, to me, and I don't want to like come off as negative towards Pouncey because I think he's an awesome player, but I don't think that Pouncey would be a guy that I would just strongly advocate. This guy's got to absolutely make the Hall of Fame.
No.
Pouncey was a very good player in his day. I do think that he may have gotten a little bit of a Steelers center push just because of the lineage with the Pittsburgh history. You think of Mike Webster, Dermontti Dawson. The Steelers have always had those really outstanding pivot men. And I think that Pouncey was a very good player. I don't think that he's a guy that I would push necessarily for the Hall of Fame. But
Yeah.
I hope he gets in because Pouncey was awesome to watch. He was a really good player for Pittsburgh. 2-time All Pro, 9 All Pros. I mean, that's definitely going to help his case. I do think it could potentially hurt, that he did walk away from the game at 31 years old. He wasn't able to kind of accrue a little bit more down the stretch of his career, but you could see it in the final year and a half of his career. Things were starting to kind of wind down a little bit because people forget like some of the injuries that he suffered. Like,
I was gonna say,
on.
dude, he suffered a lot, like some serious injuries early on in his career. Like,
yeah, there was real deal questions back in 2013, man, about what type of player he was going to be able to be coming off of that injury. So, and Pouncey, if you've listened to what, like you talked about with Ben, if you listen to what Ben said over the years, I mean, Pouncey and Heath Miller were pretty much the two guys that he would always refer to as, the top teammates on the team. Yes. So I always think back. I think my favorite Pouncey moment might be when, what was it, 2018 when Ben took off of that scramble, or 2018, 2017, I can't remember. Took off of that scramble against the Panthers and slid, and Eric Reed, took that dirty shot at him. And I thought
know where you're going with this.
I really did think that Pouncey was going to murder that man.
Oh yeah, that was the closest I've ever seen anybody come to death on a football field.
No, Eric Reed was very close to Sid 6 feet under.
Yeah.
So it was,
that was awesome. He was more aggressive in that. People forget that one because of the Mason Rudolph one, and they'll be like, oh yeah. But no. Like the Mason Rudolph one was, I'm here to defend a teammate, don't touch my quarterback. The Ben one was like, you just hit my brother. Yeah. Like that's a family member, bro. You're gonna die. Yeah, it was. That was a good one. I agree with the Pouncey thing. Like, the shorter career, 10 years in the league is nice, but it's going to be tough. I do think he gets in at some point. Like I think Pouncey is a Hall of Famer, and I think he'll be honored as such because I think just like names like that get in at some point. But there are names that will probably go in ahead of him that I think are gonna maybe make him wait a year or two. I don't think it's a long time, but I think that it's a possibility. All right, let's talk about the tight ends. We'll dive back to this. We're going to do a full overview of just, what the tight end situation is looking like. There's some reports about Darnell Washington, or some theories about Darnell Washington, I should say, not being active at the start of the season. What are the possibilities of that? What's Pat Freiermuth looking like? The whole nine. We'll start with the Darnell Washington thing. You look at the tight end room right now. It's Pat Freiermuth leading the way with Zach Gentry, Darnell Washington, and Connor Hayward fighting from behind. Rodney Williams is there, but he'll probably be a practice squatter. Is there a possibility that Darnell is inactive come week 1 and that the team sticks with Gentry? Say Zach's last name, because everybody was calling me out on it like two episodes ago, saying learn how to say Zach's last name. I thought I did. I thought I've known how to say it. Apparently I don't. Zach Gentry, which I'm saying I like, right? Saying that right.
I think you've got it right.
Right? Like,
I say Gentry, but
Gentry.
I think that the big thing for me is I always pronounce players' names wrong because I don't watch a lot of games with the sound on. so people ask me how I get so many people's names wrong, and I'm like, dude.
Same. I'm sitting in a press box. There's no noise. Nobody's talking. It's just numbers.
That I'm watching the majority of the football that I consume is all 22. So
yeah. You're just like watching at 3 a.m. It's a different situation. But I don't know what. Like, I thought I've always been saying his name right. So, anyways, Washington. Is there a possibility that they keep all 4 of those? And if they do you think that Washington really will be inactive come week 1?
I do think there's a possibility that they keep all 4. With them not having to use a spot on a traditional fullback, which I don't anticipate them doing, with Derek Watt kind of out of the fold.
Monty the Mullet, bro.
Yeah, I think you can use Hayward in that role.
Yeah, he's going
in some form or fashion, mix things up. But I would personally be really surprised if Washington was inactive come week 1. I would be borderline flabbergasted, honestly, because I truthfully don't believe that there's anything that Zach Gentry does noticeably better than Washington right now. And then I just think that in general, usually, day 2 draft picks, even if they're not going to play a significant amount of snaps week 1 of their rookie season, I think that if it's close, you typically will lean towards the young guy. You'll typically lean towards the guy that you invested a high draft pick in. And I think that Washington's going to get a chance to be, the blocking tight end on this team because, quite frankly, he's the most talented at it. So,
yeah, I think that's what it comes down to is like, what does everybody fit a role with? If Connor Hayward is that utility piece, you're going to keep him because he's that utility piece and you could use him everywhere you need to use him, even if he doesn't play a lot. Pat Freiermuth is Pat Freiermuth, so he's the receiving option, but he's your starter. You need a big blocking tight end. You didn't draft Darnell Washington to replace Pat Freiermuth. I'm just to go back on the Martavius Bryant tweet of that's not my replacement. Well, it wasn't Pat Freiermuth's and it wasn't Connor Hayward's. It was Zach's. And I think you just look at the situation, just like you said, like Gentry's good for what he does. And if the Steelers didn't draft Darnell Washington, you'd feel comfortable with the tight end room, but they upgraded and that's the end of it. And I think it'll be more interesting to see if they keep all 4 of them, because if they do keep all 4 of them, I think Gentry is the guy that finds his way onto that inactive list on Sundays instead of Darnell Washington. And if that's the case, does it even make sense to keep Gentry around?
Yeah, I think that's what you have to figure out, right? I had this theory that I think the Steelers should potentially look to mix in a little bit more 13 personnel, but you could do that with Gentry or Hayward, really, especially if you want to pass a little bit more out of it. I'm just kind of thinking back because the Chiefs were unbelievably amazing this past season out of 13 personnel. Which is not what you would typically think an Andy Reid offense would be known for, but it was a really nice wrinkle to their offense. I think it's something that the Steelers could potentially pursue, especially if they want that run-heavy kind of mantra on offense. But I do think that Zach, it could be worth keeping around even if he is inactive because, you're familiar with him, he knows the system, he knows the offense, but I definitely do think that Washington, even though I think that he has some things that he has to improve on in terms
Yeah.
of, with his actual blocking technique that needs a little bit work. Just his physical build is way more like it's more impressive than the guys in the room. And the
Mhm.
things that he can already do, even without that technical refinement, is really impressive. So I think, like I said, I think that Washington is going to be a really nice complementary piece on this offense. I'm really excited to see, what he looks like come week 1.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I think Washington's the most exciting part of that. But I think Pat Freiermuth too. Like, you take away half of Pat's workload and say you no longer have to be like that devoted blocking. Essentially what the Steelers told Pat this offseason was, don't worry about it. Just go be Pat Freiermuth. Don't be Zach Gentry or don't be anybody else. And I think that takes a lot off of his plate and also makes him a better route runner, will make him a better receiving type. Like Travis Kelce doesn't sit around to practice learning how to block. That's just, that's not part of his game. I don't think Pat Freiermuth should be doing the same thing. You should learn, but it shouldn't be most of his, or at least half of his workload. I think that bumps him up. And then you got Connor Hayward that I think could be utilized quite a bit. You see a role for him. I think that's the biggest question next is, do you see a role for Connor Hayward on this offense, or you think he's got to kind of earn his spot?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be potentially a little bit of a Swiss Army knife kind of
Yeah.
role. Is he going to play a little bit of fullback? Is he going to play a little bit of, wing? Is he going to potentially get a little bit of snaps in the slot? I
Yep.
think that Hayward's value honestly may come from if Freiermuth were to go down with an injury.
Mm-hmm.
Hayward could supplement some of the things that Freiermuth does out of the slot as a receiver in a very, we'll just say, diminished or reduced way.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
clearly not as effective as Freiermuth is, but he's probably more effective out of the slot than a guy like Washington would be, at least early on, especially, or a guy like Gentry is going to be. So I do think that there's a little bit of value in that, especially because we know how important Freiermuth is to the offense, how many plays they run for him. They really like getting him on option routes and, especially underneath, being that security blanket, if you will, cliche for Kenny Pickett. So I think there's a role for him for sure. And I also want to point out, Hayward was a pretty solid special teamer last year.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the team. He was in the top 5, I think, for tackles as well. And the special teams is always what matters to those end of the roster type of guys. And I think even if he doesn't have a significant role on offense when everyone else is healthy, I think his special teams value is good enough to land him on the 53. So
yeah. Oh, I think he's definitely on the 53. I think that if the Steelers had to choose, if they were like, oh, we have to get rid of a tight end, it'd be Zach Gentry before it would be
because
Connor Hayward.
his skill set may be a little more repetitive.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. I think that the Swiss Army knife helps compared to, you could, worst case scenario, I don't think that you could go replace Zach Gentry very easily, but I do think that it's possible. And I think that it's much more difficult with everybody else. So I do think that those would be the 3. To keep 4, though, is very interesting. I guess the last part of this would be Pat. Do you see Pat's role changing?
That's what I'm interested to see. I think it really depends on what type of personnel they are going to really lean into. Are they going to be even more 12 personnel heavy? Are they still going to be 11 personnel base? Is Allen Robinson, do they view him as a full-time slot player? Is he going to eat into some of Pat's, snaps in the slot last year, which Freiermuth's, percentage of snaps in the slot really increased like post Chase Claypool trade.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I'm interested to see is how those pieces all fit kind of in the puzzle. But like last season, I think that he played 36% of his snaps in the slot. That was up from 32% the year before. I don't think it's crazy to think another increase could potentially be coming, but I think it all depends on what type of formations and things that they're trying to lean into on offense are. So I definitely think Freiermuth's still going to have a really, really significant role in the passing offenses and be one of their top options for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is a Pat offense. I think that the Steelers, so the way I look at it is Art Rooney has gripped Matt Canada, and I know not everybody agrees with me, but he has said, this is what we're doing. Stop it all. This is what we're doing. Gave him a game plan. And in that game plan, it will 100% include get Pat Freiermuth the ball as much as possible, because you want to know what Ben loved to do? Give Heath Miller the football. And you want to know what Kenny's going to want to do? Give Pat Freiermuth the football. The rest of them will get their touches and everybody will be just fine. But if Art Rooney's got his way, the Steelers are going to run the football and throw to their tight end, and it works all the time. So there's no reason to not make it happen. But I do think Pat's role, I don't think it changes. I think it develops, but I don't know how that development's going to look yet, because I am very interested to see how it looks in training camp when everybody's got pads on and things are running plays. And you know what I mean? Like 7-on-7s and OTAs don't really show you much in mini camp. And, you know, let's put some pads on, see where Pat ends up on a football field more often than not. And then we'll go from there. We'll answer this one, then we'll get out of here. What guys on the fringe do you think actually have a chance to make it, like Anderson and the XFL receiver?
He's talking about Hakeem Butler.
Yeah, Graham. I was looking at the name Graham, but Alfonso Graham. Who's Anderson? Who am I missing with Anderson here?
He's talking about Spencer Anderson,
the offensive guard. Gotcha. All right, so give me your guy on the fringe that you think heading into training camp's got a good shot. We don't have to go through them all, but give me your one.
Yeah, I mean, the running back 3 competition is really wide open, right? I think that you could make an argument that any of those guys could potentially be, you know, in the mix. Graham is a good one. Higgins, both of those guys could potentially make the roster, you know, take that spot from Anthony McFarland, who I think is maybe the favorite in that battle as of right now.
I would say right now, yeah.
But Hakeem Butler, I mean, we'll see. The thing with Butler is he's going to either have to provide some sort of value on special teams to kind of rip that job away from Miles Boykin, or he's going to have to just be damn near dominant, you know, as a receiver through camp and in preseason, because it's just hard, man. When you're not going to be one of the top 3-4 targets on the team, you pretty much have to have special teams value,
and you got to be good at it.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think could potentially hurt Butler. Anderson's a really interesting player, man, because he played all across the offensive line in college.
All 5 of them.
Yeah, versatility is really key for backup offensive linemen. So I think he would be a guy that I would want to particularly hang on to see if he could, you know, be a guy that they develop, even if he's, you know, nothing more than a backup. I definitely agree with that. The Steelers' depth at offensive line is it's definitely more intriguing this year than it has been in years past. And I think that's really exciting. It's going to give us a lot more to watch, I feel like, in the preseason as well. You think about just the second team offensive line and what that could look like come preseason week 1. It's either going to be Jones or Dan Moore, but you're going to have Spencer Anderson out there. You're going to have Nate Herbig out there. So there's
Kevin Dotson out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a legitimate chance that that's going to be a really good functional offensive line. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I think Spencer Anderson's a sleeper, especially I think he kind of pushes the needle of, if he starts showing up in training camp, you got to have some conversations about what you're doing with Kevin Dotson, where he's going from there. Is Spencer Anderson the swing guard or the swing tackle who could also play center and guard? You know, like it's wide open. Spencer Anderson's a good one. Very good name. Appreciate you, Thomas, for tossing that one out there, because not a lot of people would think about that one. Hakeem Butler, I think, is just like you said, it's got to be special teams. My guy on the fringe is Luke Barku, XFL cornerback. I think he looked real good in minicamp. I think there is definitely a spot for him at the end of the roster. If he was older, I think that's the key thing about Butler is he's 27, turning 28 years old. Luke Barku is 24. Full career ahead of this guy. James Pierre is 27. So you're just looking at numbers. You're looking at age. He's got the upper hand there. I think the Steelers could look at that as a piece that they could develop. He's coming off of a really good XFL season. I mean, I think that he's a guy that I kind of view as could make some plays. Could be the next James Pierre. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think with just going back to Anderson's versatility, I just looked up his snap counts, and he had over 1,000 snaps at right tackle, 819 snaps at right guard, and then 382 snaps at center. So, I mean, there's not a lot of guys that come into the league being able to be that, you know, versatile. And I think that that's interesting, not just from an experience of, okay, he already knows how to do all these different things, but I'm interested to see where the Steelers kind of envision his long-term path, you know, because you have to start somewhere, you know, before you can, you know, begin to use that versatility. I'm excited to see if I'm assuming it's going to be on the interior, but I'm excited to see whether that's at center or guard.
I agree. Here's the one to go out with. Spencer Anderson will push Kendrick Green off the roster. I don't know if he's got to even do that, but I think
Kendrick's got a little bit of a
Kendrick's got to earn his way on to the roster. Let's
I don't know that he's currently on it, the 53. So
yeah. But I agree that he's right there. All right, with that, we're heading out of here. Thomas, my man, we appreciate you for that one. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts and like this video. Find all of mine and Derek's work, including each position rundown from our boy DB, coming out on a weekly basis before training camp over at allsteelers.com. I will be back on Monday with Steven. Enjoy a beautiful weekend in the Berg.